Hello and welcome back to another episode of Diablo to D&D. My name is David, and today we're going to be going over the runes and rune word creation, not the rune words themselves. I am so excited for this episode. I have been working on this for about a week and just trying to get things settled in and figured out, because runes have so many different abilities and the rune words just add a layer of complexity to it. But when I actually sat down to create these things, they actually turned out to be less complicated than I thought. A lot of the abilities were mirrored in like the gems, and so it was just a copy paste for that. Some of them were pretty easy to do, and that was just write out the ability and be done with it. But some of the things were very difficult to come up with. Things like faster block rate on the Shale rune. How do you have faster block rate in D&D where you don't have, frames to worry about? So I'll get into all of that in a little bit, but let's introduce the runes and rune words section in the systems file. Runes and rune words. Runes are small magical objects that, when socketed into items, imbue power into that item. The power they grant depends on the rune and type of item, but generally they can be socketed into armor, shields, weapons, and magical focuses. Yes, this does mean that you can actually socket an orb or a wand or a rod or a druidic focus or even a holy symbol, as long as that is capable of holding it. The reason for that is so that these rune words can be created in a variety of items. For example, in Diablo, you have shrunken heads for the necromancer and grimoires for the warlock, and those are class-specific items. But when you get to D&D, arcane focuses are not class-specific. I mean, they kind of are. It's sorcerer, druid, or sorcerer, wizard, and warlock can use arcane focus. Paladins and clerics use holy symbols, and druidic focuses are used by druids and rangers. But I figured just kind of open it up to some more style is what I'm looking at. When socketed into the correct items in the correct order, runes combine and enhance each other to create a rune word. The item becomes a legendary magical item requiring attunement and gains new abilities, which overwrite the abilities of the runes. Only non-magical items can become rune words, and the length of the rune word must match the number of sockets. So a couple things here. First and foremost, yes, any rune word becomes a legendary magical item. I considered going through and trying to balance which ones are legendary and which ones are like a lower rarity thing. But as I was working through this, I figured that your low runes are probably rare. The gems are also rare now. Your low runes are rare, your mid runes are very rare, and your high runes are legendary. So this is kind of a mid to late game development crafting system. So you're not going to find your rune words at the early game. You might find one or two, and those are going to be your low runes, lower runes, L-O-W. There's a low rune, L-O. Anyway, you're not going to find these things early on, but if you do get one, if the DM deems it fit for you to have a low rune in the early game, then you're going to have, you treat it like a magical object, right? You can treat it like a magical item. I also determined that the rune words are going to require attunement. This is something that could go in or out depending. You might not need it, considering that these items are going to be very difficult, or that rune words are going to be very difficult to make. But this is a balancing thing that I decided to put in there for now. Also, the overriding of abilities of the runes. In Diablo, all those runes become a part of the rune word. Okay, if you have fire resist from a Ral rune, then the rune word will have fire resist. However, what I've done is for the most part, I'll be trying to keep the runes themselves involved in the rune words, but sometimes things may need to be tweaked back and forth. For example, Ralort Tal, Ancient's Pledge. This is a rune word that says that it increases your resistances and has 50% defense and something else I can't remember. What I've done for the rune words is Ral increases your fire resistance, Ort increases your poison resistance, Tal increases your lightning resistance. So I've mushed those together, and then of course the rune word adds on your cold resistance. So I've said whenever you take cold fire or lightning or poison damage, it reduces it by 1d4. So that overrides the abilities of the runes themselves with this new thing. You'll see it more when I actually make more rune words, but for right now, that's what I'm going for. That last sentence in the paragraph, that's just the rules that get applied to items in Diablo 2. You're not going to be stacking on magical effects onto runes, or onto rune words. That's just way too powerful. So let's jump into the runes themselves. I will go through these pretty quickly because there's a lot to get into. There's, 33 of these runes and a ton of effects. So I will just be talking about the translations that don't really seem to fit, or some of the difficulties that I had. For the Amn rune, the Diablo version has life stolen per hit, an attacker takes damage, and this was pretty easy to do. Look at the skull, for example. When you critically strike with this weapon, you regain 1d4 hit points. That was copied straight over. And then again for the skull, whenever you hit with a weapon attack, the attacker takes 1d4 piercing damage. This is pretty easily a fair translation. For the Burr, the Diablo version has Crushing Blow, Physical Resist. The D&D version increases the damage you deal with a critical hit and then cuts your bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. I thought about how to do Crushing Blow versus something like Deadly Strike or Critical Strike. And I figured that Crushing Blow would probably be more dealing additional damage on a critical strike. In Diablo, Critical Strike just doubles your damage. Critical Strike is the ability, Deadly Strike doubles your damage. Critical Strike, quote-unquote, gives Deadly Strike kind of thing. But Crushing Blow deals a percentage amount of damage to the enemy based on their remaining life. So you're dealing a huge chunk of damage, but you get decreasing returns as the monster's hit points go down. It's still very, very, very good, but meh. So I decided Crushing Blow is just additional damage on critical strikes versus Critical Strike or Deadly Strike, which is just increasing the critical hit range. For the Cham rune, the Diablo version has freezes target and cannot be frozen. Freezes target and cannot be frozen, kind of those opposite ones. They're kind of cold adjacent. They're not exactly cold. They interact with cold resistance, but I decided not to go with that. So instead, for the Cham rune in D&D, damage with this weapon reduces the target's speed by 10 feet until the end of the target's next turn. This speed reduction can stack. And then it says that your speed cannot be reduced except if it is set to 0. So very much a movement thing. This is kind of the idea. Freezes target prevents people from attacking back, from taking actions and whatnot. But I figured having some kind of movement ability would be a decent enough translation. The reason why your speed cannot be reduced except if it is set to 0 is, of course, cannot be frozen. But that set to 0 is for things like grappled, restrained. If you have a spell that says your speed is set to 0, if an giant octopus grapples you, you're not just gonna walk away. If you're unconscious, then you're not just gonna get up and walk away. You can't move while you are unconscious, that kind of thing. So if something sets it to 0, you're out. For the Dole rune in Diablo, it causes monsters to flee and has some replenish life. Dull Rune in here causes fear and gives you additional hit points when you regain life. It feels right to me. Causing monster to flee is just running around. It's them turning around and running. But I thought frightened is going to be pretty good, or a pretty good equivalent. For the L rune, this is the first rune that you're most likely to find, and it gives a bonus to attack rating or defense, and regardless of where it's socketed, it also gives you light radius. Now, because this is an early game thing, I decided to drop the attack rating and defense and just give a bonus to your dark vision. This is something that's not going to be terrible to find in the early game for D&D. I mean, having dark vision out to 30 feet is going to be pretty good. Yes, I know that there are most races, or a lot of races, that have dark vision out to like 60 or even 120 feet. But if you just socket this into a helm or into, your weapon, that might be just fine to have. And this could be your first foray into runes. So next up is Eld. This one gives damage to undead in a weapon, and then slower stamina drain for the armor, and increased chance of blocking in your shield. So this is the first rune in alphabetical order that has different effects based on, or like 3 different effects based on which item they are involved or socketed into. In D&D, the undead is just more damage to the undead. You roll twice, or you roll an additional time, and choose either result whenever you deal weapon damage to an undead. For the armor or helm, it gives you resistance against exhaustion, kind of that slower stamina drain, like I said. Then for a shield or focus, this is kind of a miniature, shield. Gives you a reaction to get +1 to your armor class, which has a chance of making that attack to miss. It's just a +1 because this is the second most likely rune to find in the early games. It's a bit of a power jump between an L and an Eld, but, you got to start somewhere. For the next one, Eth. This one gives -2 target's defense and then increases your mana regeneration. This one gave me a little bit of trouble. That minus to target defense, because this is an early game, giving advantage on weapon attack is a little wonky. So instead what I did is give it a conditional advantage. When you hit a creature with a weapon attack using this weapon, you may spend a bonus action to gain advantage on your next weapon attack against that creature before the end of your next turn. So this is, if you hit once, you're more likely to hit again, which is actually how that minus target defense works in Diablo. Then the regenerate mana, once at the end of a short rest, you may regain an expended spell slot of a level lower than your proficiency bonus once per day. Regenerate mana is always going to be weird. This one does basically nothing for martials unless you're like an arcane trickster or a eldritch knight, but you're not going to be using this rune on most, martial involved armors or shields. For the Foul rune, this one gives a +10 to strength across all of its sockets. And this one I went back and forth on and ended up with giving the item 4 charges. Whenever you make a strength ability check, you can expend 1 charge to gain advantage on the roll. And then it regains all expended charges at dawn. It used to give advantage on all strength ability checks, but I decided that was probably a bit too strong. And also with the other bonus to stat ones got a little wonky. So I decided to give it a charge effect instead. For Gull, this one gave a bonus to attack rating as well as increasing your maximum poison resist. This one was pretty fun. Because this is a fairly high rune, just giving yourself advantage on the next weapon attack you make before the end of your next turn is just good. It's powerful enough that this is the kind of stuff that you should be doing at higher levels. I still did say it's a bonus action, but it's also like you also have a bunch of other effects in your Runewords. So I figured, it's also only 20% bonus to attack rating. So, as for the armor and shield, this one says whenever you get poison damage, whenever you prevent poison damage to you, it prevents an additional amount equal to your proficiency bonus. This works with resistance to poison. This works with an emerald, for example, that's socketed into your gear. This works with other spells and abilities that prevent poison damage, and this one just kind of adds on top of that. For the Hell Rune, it has the same ability for all 3 items or all 3 classes. It cuts the requirements by a certain amount. The requirements, by the way, are stat requirements, not like level requirements. In the D&D translation, it just gives proficiency with the item to somebody that's not proficient with the item, and that any ability score requirements that item has are removed. So this means that you can get plate armor on your wizard. This is going to be insanely good if you can get plate armor and you have a wizard. Next up is Io. This one gives a bonus to vitality, but in D&D, you don't have vitality or constitution ability checks. You just have constitution saving throws. There's a few, whatever. In this case, what it does is it raises the floor of your constitution saving throws. Whenever you make a constitution saving throw, you treat any roll on the d20 less than your constitution modifier as your constitution modifier. So this is actually pretty good for barbarians are always going to be amazing because they have a high constitution and they are proficient in constitution saving throws. But this means that if you roll, say if you have a +4 constitution, you treat a 1, 2, or 3 as a 4, which means you can bump it up a little bit. This is kind of this is a mid rune, okay? So it's not going to be like a huge thing, and it's not going to come into play all the time, but it is something that I could stack on to an effect just to see if it, works. And of course, if you have proficiency with Constitution saving throws, this does mean that you are more likely to maintain concentration on your spells. Kind of. Now that I think about that, in order to really maintain that concentration, you'd have to have a high enough proficiency bonus, like a +5 to your con save, or +5 proficiency and 5 constitution, or a 6 and a 4. I'll make a note of this. It might need to be changed. Anyway, I've spent too much time on this. I've got 33 items to get through. For Ist, this one was weird because it increases the chance of getting magical items. You don't have that in D&D because the DM gives you magic items. So instead, what I said is that you can spend an action to detect the location of magical items within 30 feet of you. This effect is blocked by radiation rules, as is traditional with most detection. This one I feel is actually pretty good. It's a decently high rune. It's 24 out of 33. And being able to just know when magic is around you is still pretty good. I thought about doing detect magic at will or identify at will or whatever, but I like this one because it is unique. Next up, we go to Ith, which increases your maximum damage and gives you damage taken goes to mana. Maximum damage is pretty easy. It just bumps the weapon's damage die by 1 step up to a maximum of d12 because you are not getting a d20. Don't even think about it. And then for the armor, helm, shield, and focus, whenever your hit points become less than half your hit point maximum, you regain an expended spell slot of a level less than your proficiency bonus. Once you use this ability, you can't use it again until the next dawn. So this one is kind of I am in danger, I've been hit, and then I need to get something back so that I can recover. That was just kind of the best translation that I could come up with. Next up is the legendary Jaw Rune. It ignores target's defense or increases your maximum life either by a percentage or by a flat amount. This one I really do like. The weapon says that weapon attacks made with this weapon ignore all magical increases to the target's defense. So this means that it gets around shield. It gets around whatever that divine armor is, Shield of Faith. It gets around Shield of Faith. It gets around magical items. For example, if they have a bonus, if they've got like a +3 shield or something like that, you can just ignore that. And they'd only get that +2 because of the shield. Lowercase shield, not the spell. Which means that it's pretty darn good. For the armor or helm, shield or focus, this one just increases your maximum life by your character level. It's just additional hit points. Still pretty good though. For the co-rune, this one gives a bonus to dexterity. Much like the foul rune, it's just you have charges, expend charges, advantage on dexterity ability checks. Lem got really interesting. This one increases the gold that you find from monsters. And, yeah, I spent so much time on this one, and eventually I found an item that I really find funny called Bone Counter. This was from some module from somewhere, and that item gives you silver whenever you kill an undead. So the Lem rune gives you silver when you kill a creature, because you're killing creatures, they're dropping gold, and yada yada yada. Now, is this one going to end up like making you a lot of money? Probably not. You have to be the one to kill the monster, so on and so forth. But still, like, that's pretty good. I might bump this up to 1 gold piece, but for right now, a silver is, I think, going to be fine. For the low rune, this is where we get that deadly strike, and it also bumps your maximum lightning resistance. Low rune bumps your critical strike range from a 20 to a 19 to 20. This is a fairly high rune, so that's of legendary quality. And then, of course, whenever something prevents lightning damage to you, it prevents additional lightning damage equal to your proficiency bonus. Lum rune was interesting. This one gives a bonus to your energy, but energy doesn't have a good translation in D&D. So I originally went with something like giving you advantage on wisdom or intelligence checks or something like that. And eventually I settled on, much like the dexterity and vitality runes, dexterity, vitality, and strength runes, this one gives you 2 charges, but you can spend those on wisdom, intelligence, or charisma ability checks. You have a broader variety of things that you can do, but fewer opportunities to use them. For the Mal rune, this one prevents monster heal and reduces the magic damage you take. This one's pretty good. I mean, situationally good. In a weapon, the Mal rune prevents, monsters' healings. So if you're going up against vampires, for example, some zombies, trolls, they have regeneration. And if you don't have a radiant damage or fire or something like that, then you can potentially just hit them with your weapon, and now they can't, regenerate hit points. As for the magic damage, that one's pretty easy. Damage you take from magical sources is reduced by 1d4. For the Neph rune, this is another early game one. You're going to get knockback on your weapon and then a defense against missiles on your armor and shields. The knockback is going to be pretty easy. It's just whenever you hit a creature once per turn, you can push them 5 feet away from you as long as they are large or smaller. I think actually in Diablo, the bigger monsters are immune to knockback, so this makes sense. As for the other ability, whenever you hit with a ranged attack, you get a +1 bonus to your AC. Kind of that miniature shield, similar to the Eld rune. Except the Eld rune says weapon attacks, and the Neph rune works with ranged magical attacks. The Ohm rune is pretty good. This one gives a bonus to your enhanced damage, as well as bumping your maximum cold resistance. And in D&D, this one turns your item into a +1 weapon, and prevents cold damage on top of preventing cold damage. Now this bonus to your attack and damage rolls, this does mean that it does stack with, say, a +1 or a +2 weapon. Granted, it's a legendary item. So you're going to end up with, do you really want to use this one for a just a +1 onto your weapon, or are you going to hold on to it for a rune word? Ort is a pretty common rune. It gives lightning damage in a weapon and lightning resist in a shield, and pretty much like the topaz, this one just says the weapon gives additional lightning damage, and armors and shields give lightning damage reduction. For the pull rune, it gives damage to demons and then bumps the defense of the item that you put it in for armor and shields. This one is damage to demons. You can roll the damage dice additional time and choose either result, and then gives a +1 bonus to AC while wearing this item. I mean, this is a pretty simple one, so let's just keep moving on. For the Ral rune, much like the Ort rune, it gives fire damage and fire resist, so instead of lightning damage, this one's just fire damage. Same one. The Shield rune gave me a little bit of trouble. This one was the last ability that I figured out. The weapon gives you increased attack speed, the armor gives you faster hit recovery, and the shield gives you faster block rate. I don't know what to do for faster block rate. So I was doing my scripture study last night and had a burst of inspiration, so I quickly wrote it down before I went to bed. For the weapon in D&D, you can spend a bonus action to make a weapon attack with this weapon, but you don't add your ability score modifier to the attack or damage rolls. This does mean if you're using the 2024 edition, you do not get the graze property. The graze property just deals, if you miss, it deals damage equal to your ability score modifier. However, this one says you don't get your ability score modifier, so those two cancel out and you end up with nothing. So it's much less accurate, and it's much less damage, but it is an additional attack. So take that for what it's worth. For the armor or helm, it gives you advantage on saving throws against stunned and incapacitated. Your faster hit recovery is whenever you take a massive damage, you go into, hit recovery. You take a couple of frames to, do this animation of, and getting knocked back. However, faster hit recovery cuts that time down. Same thing with the shield, faster block. Paladins can actually end up with a 1 frame faster block rate with a high enough holy shield and some other items that give you additional faster block rate. So paladins, the whole shield class are pretty good with this. But the Shale rune in D&D, as a reaction, when you are hit with an attack, you can impose disadvantage on the next attack against you before the start of your next turn. So this one is a little worse and a little better than those other runes that increase your AC, because you do have to get hit. However, this does work with any attack. And this was the one that gave me that trouble, because I ended up going, if you're hit, then you go into that animation, but now you're more likely to block that next attack. So there you go. Here's a faster hit recovery in D&D. Or a faster block rate, excuse me. All right, let's work our way through the last few. We've got a Soul rune. This one gives bonus to minimum damage, and does some damage reduced by. So in D&D, this one says you can reroll one of the weapon's damage die, which bumps your minimum damage. And then the armor and shield gives bludgeoning, piercing, slashing damage a -1. So this is very much like the physical resistance of the Burr rune, but instead of a percentage-based, or in that case a die, this one is just a flat rate, but it's much lower. It's also comparing a rank 12 item to a rank 30 item, so take that. All right, for the Sir, this one has hit blinds target and some maximum mana. This one was pretty easy. I mean, the biggest difficulty that I had was determining the DC for the Constitution saving throw. But whenever you hit a creature with a weapon attack, they make a DC 20 Constitution saving throw. On a fail, it is blinded until its next turn. This is a rank 29 out of 33 weapon, or rune. Blinding on any hit, or having a chance to blind on any hit, is going to be pretty good. Though I might have to make that once per turn. As for the maximum mana, it's just as a bonus action, you can regain an expended spell slot of a level less than your proficiency bonus. legendary item, additional spell slots, it's fine. For the Tal rune, I think I swapped. I think I got the runes mixed up for Ancient's Pledge. This one is the poison damage. It gives some poison damage and some poison resist, which is very much like the Ral, very much like the Ort, very much like the Thul, which is the next one. This one just gives some cold damage, or some poison damage, some poison damage, and then poison damage reduced by Thul, same thing, but for cold. The Tyr rune drove me crazy. So this one has mana after each kill, just a +2 to mana after each kill, which is fantastic for early game spells, which tend to have a fairly low mana cost against creatures that have a fairly low hit points. So what I did is whenever you kill a creature with a spell of 2nd level or higher, you regain an expended spell slot of a lower level once per day. This means that in the early games, this basically does nothing until you have 2nd level spells, or 2nd level spell slots, and you have to expend both a 1st level spell slot and then a 2nd level spell slot in order to get that 1st level spell slot back. This is pretty good. It does kind of bring up that lower level power level, but again, I mean, this is a rare item. You're not going to be getting this until probably early mid-game. Last 3, for the rune, it has a % chance of open wounds or gives all resistances. This is 22 out of 33, so it's going to be pretty powerful. When you hit a creature with a weapon attack using this weapon, you may spend a bonus action to have it make a DC 17 Constitution saving throw. On a fail, it takes 1d8 necrotic damage at the end of each of its turns until it spends an action to end the effect. Open wounds just means that the creature bleeds for a certain amount of time. This is pretty good because in Diablo, creatures have a natural hit point regeneration. And taking damage, or like taking damage over time, poison damage, for example, or prevent monster heal, open wounds, those stop them from regenerating hit points. And so it's pretty darn good. In this case, it's just open wounds. You take 1d8 damage at the end of each of its turns. It's not that good. I could probably bump that up to like 1d10 or 1d12 or like 2d6 or something like that, but I'm working on balancing right now, so don't worry about it. So yeah, this is, I mean, you could just hit and then just let it go because, oh no, 1d8 necrotic damage. They might be resistant or immune to necrotic damage, so this could do nothing. As for the armor and helm, much like the diamond, cold, fire, lightning, and poison, damage is reduced by 1. This works immensely well with those other elemental runes, the ones that give you maximum elemental resistance, because it just kind of covers all of them, and then you stack on your proficiency bonus on top of that. Pretty darn good. Next up is the Vex rune. This one has some mana stolen per hit and then increases your maximum fire resist. The mana stolen per hit, this one was near the end. I mean, one of the last 2 or 3 that I was working on. And I am very proud of this creation. Whenever you hit a creature with a weapon attack using this weapon, it regains 1 charge up to a maximum of 5. As an action, you can expend all charges to regain an expended spell slot of a level equal to or less than the number of expended charges. Once you regain 2 spell slots this way, you can't use this ability again until the next dawn. So this is kind of your mana stolen per hit. If you want to have a decent amount of, if you want to regain a 4th level spell slot, you have to hit something 4 times with your weapon in order to regain those things. So you're going to be looking at a paladin or a ranger. I'm thinking in D&D terms. You're going to want this for a paladin or like a warlock, for example, like a blade warlock, which is also in D&D. Whatever. You know what I mean. Like a half-caster kind of thing, a martial half-caster. And this does, as of right now, carry over from day to day. So you can just hit something up to 5 and then take a long rest the next day, expend a 5th level spell slot, and then immediately get your spell slot back. I mean, as an action, but meh. Lastly, we have the rarest 33 out of 33 rune, and that is the Zod rune, and it gives everything indestructible. Yay. This item cannot be damaged or broken. This mod shows up on a handful of items, and they're useful. I mean, it's just like you save a few gold not repairing the item, and it's not going to break on you when you need it. But also, you should be paying attention and not let it get to that point. So Zod is the rarest and probably the most useless of them all. It's such a bad item. I mean, okay, I take that back. You can put this in ethereal items. Like weapons that you want for like a Fury Druid or things like that. Means that they're going to be sticking around permanently, and that's really, really, really good. It has its niche uses, but for the most part, it's pretty useless. Anyway, that's going to be it for today. I am not going to be going over the Runewords themselves until a later date, once I have them fleshed out. But now that I have the runes down, I can start on the Runewords, so hooray! Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments, and I will talk to you later. You can find me at XenosFan2, that is XENOZFAN2, on Blue Sky and Reddit. And you can contact the channel directly at Diablo TODND on Blue Sky and YouTube. Thank you much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Have a good whatever.